Right, guys, welcome to the show. We are happy to have you. I'm your host, Amala Ekpunobi, and as always, we have Taylor in Nashville.
Hey guys, happy Wednesday.
We're going to have a lot to talk about today, and obviously it's going to be a very serious subject matter. We're going to be talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that is currently happening right now, and hopefully from a very different perspective than I think many of you are used to having on this particular topic. I see many of you in the chat already stating where your stance is on this issue, and let's just make it very clear right at the moment. You are not going to get a strong stance from me on this issue today in either direction. I am neither pro-Palestinian nor am I pro-Israel. At the very least, I will say I'm pro-truth when it comes to this matter. And when I'm watching all of the different media outlets that are covering this, people on Twitter, people on YouTube, Instagram, everything that's coming out, it is really hard to get definitive facts and objectivity on this. It seems as though everybody who is talking about this conflict is coming at it from a super solid perspective from whatever camp they are in. Now, a little bit about my background on this issue. There is no background on this issue. I don't have a background on this issue. I don't have, a dog in the fight on this whatsoever. In fact, many of you might share this very same sentiment. I find it hard to get educated on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict due to how much bias has been injected from both sides on the issue, and how it seems as though, given any media source that you choose, they're only going to talk about this conflict from one perspective. And I find it very, very difficult. So if you're anticipating to, get in a fight on this stream over a stance on, the Palestinian side, on the Israeli side, let's please not have that happen right now. One thing that I will say, and one thing that I feel like needs to be emphasized, is I would like to leave plenty of room for the people who are directly affected by this conflict to be the ones to speak on it. People who have, direct experience, be it in Israel or in Gaza, whatever the case may be, who have actually, seen, felt, heard what is happening there. I cannot emphasize enough what I've already said, that it is so hard to get information as to how this conflict is playing out, who's affected, how they're affected, who's at fault. One stance that I did appreciate, that I think we'll read at the top of this episode before getting into the back and forth, is actually something that was posted by Destiny. Y'all know him. He's a very popular, I guess we'll call him liberal, on all social media, big Twitch streamer, does a lot of debating, whatever. He put out this tweet on the conflict, and we'll read it for you. You guys, of course, can put your thoughts in the chat down below. He says, "It's completely possible and often the case for multiple parties to be simultaneously understandable, yet wholly condemnable when it comes to violent actions. Israel should not be confining those in the Gaza Strip to such horrible conditions. The settlements need to not only stop, but be withdrawn from, which, if not all, of the West Bank. Much, if not all, of the West Bank. However, there is clearly a security risk posed to Israelis by those in Gaza. Hamas aren't attacking Israel because of the settlements, and they just as soon kill every Jewish person if they had the chance to. It is literally part of their creed and the backbone of the foundation of Hamas. It's understandable why those in Palestine would want to fight back. It's not acceptable to capture, torture, rape, murder, and defile the corpses of civilians from Israel, though. Recording yourselves doing it and throwing it on the internet to show off your savagery to the world reveals far more intent than simply freedom fighting," in quotes there. Anyone who says this is, quote, based or, quote, revolutionary is showing their true colors. 80 years ago, they would be cheering on Jews being trained off to Auschwitz, okay? The deaths of Palestinians far outnumber the deaths of Israelis for a variety of reasons, and it's fair to take that into account when weighing up the responsibilities of both sides to end these struggles. But remember, while Israel might dwarf Palestine on its own, Israel stands against a wave of enemies in the Middle East. If Palestinians stop fighting, perhaps conditions would grow worse for them, or perhaps not. If Israel stopped fighting, it will cease to exist, and all her citizens are likely to face the same treatment you've seen today in videos spammed across Twitter and the news today. The violence is tragic, none of it should be celebrated. No one should be giddy for vengeance or continuous bloodshed. If this situation is to ever be resolved, far more sober minds need to prevail in these conversations, rather than the ideologically partisan ones that look to co-opt every tragedy around the world to further themselves. I read that, and at least I felt a little sense of clarity in the midst of all the stuff that is being shared on the internet. That, I mean, I can understand how maybe some people have the perspective of being able to see through and see what is what, but at this time it has been extremely difficult for me. Now, again, place your opinions down in the chat below. Hopefully, during this stream, we can encourage fruitful conversation about this current conflict, and maybe even you guys can go back and forth with each other. I see a very big mix of opinions, but I want to point out something that's happened recently, and specifically with BLM Chicago, and also I believe BLM Los Angeles. They decided to hop on the internet in the midst of this, and you guys have heard about the Hamas attacks and what they've been doing, and using the paragliders and the innocent Israelis that have had their lives taken. BLM Chicago decided to post this. That is it. I stand with Palestine. And with this, they posted this graphic of the paragliders and Hamas. Now, here's what I can understand, right? I can understand having the stance of Free Palestine and having that as an individual. I can understand the stance of being pro-Israel, or, you know, the people who are in that camp of things. What I do not understand is people who would support terrorist attacks like this. Now, I know that there's the argument that of what did they expect, you know, with all of the oppression, it's soon to boil over in some way or another, and this is how it boils over. But this, to me, is just completely unjust. It's devastating to see some of the footage that is coming out of Israel, to hear about some of the innocent lives that have been taken, babies included, according to some news reports, and how anybody, I could hear that and think, this is what is right, this is what is just, and this is what freedom fighting looks like, really does blow my mind. I can understand the perspective of, at some point, you know, this occupation is going to come to full force, and the Palestinians will rise up in some way against the force that has placed them in Gaza. You know, beheading children, killing grandmothers, you know, live on Facebook. This is atrocious, and this is not to discount the atrocities that have happened against the Palestinians. It's not to discount any of that, and that's why I think that Destiny statement gave me a lot of clarity, and at least cut through some of the noise, that you can have a sense of understanding for both camps in a conflict, while still viewing that the atrocities that are committed on both sides as utterly heinous and condemnable. I just don't know, you know, what my opinion helps in any way, shape, or form. That's why we're gonna talk about the BLM stuff, and we're gonna get into some progressive responses to this. But I also want to acknowledge, you know, conservative responses to this. I've seen some posts that have blown my mind, of people saying they don't care how much bloodshed happens in the wake of this. Gaza needs to be completely destroyed. Palestinians need to be completely destroyed. I've heard the same thing from the people in the Free Palestine camp. To me, it's disgusting. It's disgusting to hear people talk like this, and it harkens back to a point that I made a long time ago, that we are very much desensitized to death and destruction, not only here in America, but across the world, that you could so flippantly call for, you know, the death of any group of people, terrorists aside, right? We're gonna address that in a second, and acknowledge, you know, that innocents will lose their lives in the wake of this. How anybody could just so flippantly make that prescription, I don't know. It gets to me a little bit, but again, I am not directly affected by this conflict.